This is a story about clothing. It's about the clothes we wear, the people who make these clothes, and the impact that it's having on our world. It's a story about greed and fear, power and poverty. It's complex, as it extends all the way around the world. But it's also simple, revealing just how connected we are to the many hearts and hands behind our clothes. I came into this story with no background in fashion at all, beginning with nothing more than a few simple questions. What I've discovered has forever changed the way I think about the things I wear. And my hope is that it might just do the same for you.
Well, state media in Bangladesh say an 8-story building has collapsed near the capital of Dhaka, killing more than 70 people.
Rescue workers are racing against time, searching through the rubble, trying to find as many survivors as they can.
Hundreds are dead, hundreds more might still be buried alive after officials in Bangladesh say factory owners ignored an order to evacuate.
Some 400 dead, hundreds still believed to be missing. Garment workers in Bangladesh paying the price for cheap clothing.
A huge crowd has gathered near the building site, many of them family members looking for loved ones, and they say they can still hear people screaming from underneath the rubble, crying out for help. Many are simply losing hope.
আমি যে জায়গায় ছিলাম আমি আবার সিঁড়ির সামনে চলে গেছি দৌড়ে আর অমনি পড়ে গেছি পড়ে যাওয়ার লগে লগে আমার দুই পায়ে চাপা পড়ছে এই সাইডে যে ওয়ালগুলো আছে না ওয়ালে চাপা পড়ছে ওই চাপার তো পাও আমি দেখতেছি কি টান দিয়েও কোনো অবস্থায় আনতে পারব না তো আমি টানাটানি করি নাই এমনি এখন মাথার মধ্যে কত চিন্তা কত রকম মনে কথা আসতেছে কামতেও পারতেছি না
Anybody who, like me, had written about problems in the supply chain, particularly for fast fashion, and tried to articulate how the risk was being carried by those who are most vulnerable and the worst paid, you tried to articulate that, but you could never have envisaged that there would be such a catastrophic illustration of what you were trying to say. And Rana Plaza, to me, was like some horror story.
2 weeks after the catastrophe, and the death toll now stands at a staggering 931, making it the worst garment industry disaster in history.
I think one of the most profoundly impressing things about the Rana Plaza disaster was that news that the workers had already pointed out to the management the cracks in the building. They'd already pointed out that the building was structurally unsafe, and yet they'd been forced back in.
Many survivors are asking how they could have been forced to return to work when management already was aware of the cracks in the building and workers' concerns on the very day of the collapse.
A lot of clothes in American stores are made in Bangladesh by workers who earn about $2 a day. Last month there, a garment factory collapsed, killing more than 1,000. And a few months before that, a factory fire killed more than 100.
And as bodies are still being pulled out of the rubble, another factory in Bangladesh caught fire early this morning, killing 8 more people.
As story after story of clothing factory disasters kept filling the news, it was now the case that 3 of the 4 worst tragedies in the history of fashion had all happened in the last year. As the death toll rose, so did the profits generated. The year following the disaster at Rana Plaza was the industry's most profitable of all time. The global fashion industry is now an almost $3 trillion annual industry.
Bangladesh is now the second largest apparel exporter after China. How? Well, unlike some of its competitors, Bangladeshi manufacturing remains dirt cheap, and unions have limited power. The country cornered the absolute bottom of the value chain.
Those 1,000 poor girls lost their life because everybody didn't bother, didn't give damn shit, and they just wanted the cheap price and a good profit. It shouldn't be like that. Everybody should take the responsibility for those kids. That's how it is. And it might coming more. Sorry, but yeah, you know that it's not only the press pressure. It's something ignoring other people's life. It's not. It's not right. It's 21st century. It's a global world we are living, and we just ignore other people's life. How come?
Monsanto is proud to be the industry leader in agricultural innovation because of what these agricultural advancements can do to help you double yields for the future needs of the world. We're dedicated to the future of agriculture and providing farmers with innovations that help them produce more and conserve more while improving the lives of people around the world. Together, we can face the challenges of the next generation and beyond.
After the wars, where all these redundant factories that made war chemicals, explosives, were lying around, the Western countries thought that it would be a good idea to market them to the third world. After all, the same industry that makes explosives makes nitrogen fertilizers. And they started to push nitrogen fertilizers from the 50s onwards, after we became independent. But the nitrogen fertilizers don't do very well with native crops. There's a problem of lodging. So the whole system then organized itself to redesign the plant in order to take on more chemicals. Bt cotton is a cotton in which a gene has been added from a bacteria to produce a toxin. But the Bt cotton, which is supposed to control a pest, has been offered because it's a way for companies to own the seed.
By patenting these genetically modified plants, Monsanto has become the largest seed and chemical corporation in history. I wanted to speak with someone who had worked with the company, and I got word that a former managing director for India was willing to talk.
One of my close friends who was in the research division working on these modified crops, he came to my hotel for a drink. We were sitting and having a drink, and after a few drinks he told me, "Hey Jack, we're going to change the type of business you're doing in India." I said, "What do you mean?" "We are going to get into seeds business, and we are going to make the seed business of all crops so that we have the monopoly on seeds, and every farmer has to come to us to buy seeds every time." That rang a bell in my mind. If a poor farmer is to go to Monsanto to buy seeds every time, and such expensive seeds, at that time there's no idea of BT at all for me. Genetically modified seed was not in my mind. Even seed monopoly is something very bad.
So farmers get into debt when they get the seed because of the high cost, 17,000% more. They get into deeper debt because it doesn't deliver on the promise of controlling pests, so they have to buy more pesticides. The tragedy with chemicals, whether it's fertilizers or pesticides, is that they are what has been called ecological narcotics. The more you use them, the more you need to use them. For a while, the yield of the single commodity climbs, and then it starts to decline because you have contaminated the soil.
Most of India's cotton is grown in the Punjab region, which has quickly become the largest user of pesticides in India. Dr. Pritpal Singh has been studying the effects of these chemicals on human health, and his reports show a dramatic rise in the number of birth defects, cancers, and mental illness here in the region.
You can go in every village, you will see that hundreds of patients are suffering with cancers. 70 to 80 kids in every village you will find them facing the severe mental retardation and physical handicap. companies, fertilizer, pesticides, they are totally refusing the after effects of the pesticide and fertilizers, and this is the you can say classical symptoms of the toxicity. In one village there is 60 MNT-targeted kids like this boy, so it will be very dangerous phenomena in the Punjab. And pupils, farmers and labor, there is small farmers and maximum the labor means, so they can't afford now treatment. Ultimately they have accept to the death of their kids, and they are waiting the death of their kids. Mother is waiting for the death of this boy.
Companies that make the GM seeds and make the chemicals are the same companies, and they're also the same companies that make the medicines which they are not patenting. So you get cancer, there are more profits. For them it's a win, 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 win. As for nature and people, it's a lose, 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 lose. It's the day those agents of these companies come to the farmer and say, you owe me this much, you haven't paid back, now your land is my land. That day the farmer will go into his field, drink a bottle of pesticide and end his life. And every widow I've talked to said, and the neighbors came and said they first found my husband lying in the field.
In the last 16 years, there have been more than 250,000 recorded farmer suicides in India. That's about one farmer every 30 minutes, and it's the largest recorded wave of suicides in history.
I try to understand better why people doesn't realize that they are becoming poorer and poorer, and I ask myself, okay, but what has changed instead of when I was young? And fashion is something that has dramatically changed. I was able to buy 1, 2 t-shirts, 4 t-shirts, for example, a year. Now, I mean, also my children, they used to buy every party, I mean, they buy a t-shirt. And so I understood that the fast fashion is something totally new. If you have noticed, the price has decreased in the last years, and it has followed the middle class disappearing. So all the things that people really need are very costly, like home, like study, like life insurance. On the other side, there is a sort of consolation part of their life. I can buy a t-shirt, 2 t-shirts a party, or eventually a day, although I'm very poor and I've lost all the things I really needed.
You know, Martin Luther King Jr., at a speech in a Brooklyn church, he said that what America needed was a revolution of values. It needed to stop treating people like things, needed to stop treating people in ways that were just about profit, but instead to treat people in a real and human way.
My God, we can do better than this. If what we want is to spread, as I would argue we do, spread industry around the world, not concentrated in one place, let the benefits be shared globally, then let's do that in an orderly, reasonable, careful way.
We need to recognize that capital is just money. Money is a means, and people should be accountable for how it's used. We need to celebrate the creative power of human beings, and we need to talk of creative work. We must stop talking about labor. We need to look at the land as not a commodity to be speculated on and traded, but as the very basis of our life, as Mother Earth.
You change all consumers into activists, all consumers asking ethical questions, all consumers asking quite simple questions about where their clothes are from, all consumers saying, I'm sorry, it's not acceptable for someone to die in the course of a working day.
We can't just roll over and say, yes, have it, do what you like. It's too important, it's too significant an industry, it has too much impact and effect on millions of people worldwide and common resources.
Will we continue to search for happiness in the consumption of things? Will we be satisfied with a system that makes us feel rich while leaving our world so desperately poor? Will we continue to turn a blind eye to the lives of those behind our clothes? Or will this be a turning point, a new chapter in our story, when together we begin to make a real change, as we remember that everything we wear was touched by human hands? In the midst of all the challenges facing us today, for all the problems that feel bigger than us and beyond our control, maybe we could start here with clothing.